The Whispering Valley rarely knew true night. It existed in a perpetual twilight, a soft, dream-spun embrace, where the sky above shimmered with the distant, unchanging gaze of a million tiny stars, even when the two gentle moons, Lyra and Kale, sailed their slow, silver arcs across the heavens. Here, towering trees known as gleamwood sentinels rose like ancient, silent guardians, their bark glowing with an internal cool luminescence that painted the undergrowth in shades of emerald and sapphire. Rivers of liquid starlight, not water, wound through meadows of soft singing moss, and the air itself hummed with a melody so ancient it felt like the very breath of the world. Ilara knew this melody better than most. She was a starlight weaver, or at least, she was learning to be. At 11 years old, her senses were finely attuned to the subtle vibrations that held the valley together. While others felt the magic as a comforting warmth, a gentle lullaby, Ilara could discern the individual threads of star song, the intricate, shimmering patterns that made up the valley's living tapestry. She could hear the distinct, gentle thrum of the gleamwood sentinels, the quiet, contented sigh of the star rivers as they flowed, and the delicate, crystalline chime of the glow-moss gardens her grandmother tended. Her home was nestled high within the crook of a particularly ancient gleamwood sentinel, its glowing branches forming a natural protective canopy. It was a cozy space carved from the living wood, smelling of rich earth, sunberry cakes, and the faint, sweet scent of enchanted herbs. Elder Willow, Ilara's grandmother, was the valley's current keeper, a woman whose skin was as crinkled as dried autumn leaves, but whose eyes held the same ageless, knowing twinkle as the distant stars. She had taught Ilara everything she knew, from identifying the delicate whispers of a sleep petal bloom, to understanding the complex harmonies that bound their valley to the greater, shimmering expanse of the Vale of Dreams, the magical barrier that separated their unique pocket of existence from the wider, often harsher, world beyond. Tonight, however, the star songs felt different. Ilara sat on the mossy balcony of their home, her small hands resting lightly on the glowing bark of the gleamwood sentinel. Usually its hum was a deep, resonant bass note in the valley's symphony, a soothing thrum that vibrated through her very bones. But tonight, it was fainter. A whisper instead of a confident song. The motes of light that usually danced like fireflies in the perpetual twilight seemed less numerous, their glow a touch less vibrant. "Grandmother," Ilara said, her voice a soft murmur that wouldn't disturb the valley's quiet. "Do you hear it?" Elder Willow, who was patiently weaving a dreamcatcher from luminescent spider silk and iridescent thistle down, paused her work. Her fingers, gnarled with age, stilled. She tilted her head, her eyes closing for a moment as she listened, not with her ears, but with the deeper intuitive sense that all starlight weavers possessed. A faint frown creased her brow. "Yes, little starseed," she replied, her voice soft as falling leaves. "The symphony is muted tonight. The gleamwood sentinels sigh rather than sing, and the rivers of light flow with a hesitant current." She opened her eyes, their ancient depths reflecting the subtle dimness of the valley. "Your senses are sharper than I remember mine being at your age. A true gift, Ilara." Ilara felt a mix of pride and unease. "Is it bad?" Elder Willow sighed, a sound like the rustling of distant leaves. "Not yet, my dear. But it is a worry. The star songs are the lifeblood of our valley, the essence that keeps the gleamwood glowing, the rivers flowing, and the Vale of Dreams strong. If they falter for too long, the valley itself will begin to fade." She set aside her dreamcatcher and gestured for Ilara to sit beside her. In times long past, when the star songs grew faint, it usually meant the threads had become tangled or broken in the higher reaches, where the star rivers meet the vale itself. The sky pinnacles, we call them, those shimmering peaks that pierce the clouds and touch the very fabric of the dream barrier. Ilara knew of the sky pinnacles. They were distant, glittering spires that rose majestically from the northern edge of the valley, always crowned with a soft, ethereal mist. Legends spoke of them as the birthplace of the star songs, the place where starlight condensed into the luminous rivers and nourishing magic that sustained their home. A starlight weaver would journey to the sky pinnacles, Elder Willow continued, to mend the broken threads, to untangle the knots, and to reweave the harmony into the veil. It is a sacred task, a demanding one. She looked, at her own hands, then at Ilara's small, nimble ones. Alas, my own journeying days are long past, and you, my starseed, are still learning the most complex patterns. A pang of disappointment, swiftly followed by determination, pricked Ilara. She longed to prove herself, to be as capable as her grandmother. But what can we do? If the songs fade, won't everything stop? Not immediately, child. The valley has a deep well of magic, but we must understand the nature of this fading. Is it merely a tangle or something more? The song is not simply quiet, it feels off-key. A dissonance I haven't heard in many, many years. Elder Willow's gaze grew distant, as if searching through the annals of time. We need to investigate. Before we consider a journey to the sky pinnacles, we must first assess the extent of the fading, and if possible, discern the cause. She turned back to Ilara, her eyes twinkling with a renewed purpose. Tonight I need you to venture to the moon petal glade. It is where the star songs are usually strongest, where the moon petal blooms gather the essence of the starlight in their petals. If the fading is widespread, it will be evident there. Listen closely, little weaver. Listen for the song, and for any discord within it. Ilara's heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was her first true task, a solitary journey beyond the immediate safety of their home tree. I will, grandmother. I'll listen with all my heart. Elder Willow offered a soft, encouraging smile. Good. Take your glimmerstone. She reached into a small velvet pouch hanging from her belt, and pulled out a palm-sized, perfectly smooth stone that pulsed with a gentle, internal light. It will shine brighter where the magic is strong and stable, and dim where it weakens. It will be your compass and your comfort. Ilara carefully took the glimmerstone. It felt warm and alive in her hand, its soft glow a reassuring presence. And take these, Elder Willow added, pressing a small pouch into Ilara's hand. Inside were 2 sunberry cakes, still warm and smelling faintly of honey and starlight, and a small vial of dream dew, collected from the leaves of sleeping flowers, known to refresh and invigorate. For your journey. And remember, Ilara, the valley itself is your guide. Listen to the whisper sprites, heed the rustling of the gleamwood, and trust your own inner song. With a final loving squeeze of her hand, Elder Willow watched Ilara prepare. Ilara fastened the glimmerstone to a leather thong around her neck, tucking it beneath her tunic so its light pulsed gently against her skin. She slung the pouch of provisions over her shoulder. Her heart beat a steady rhythm, a hopeful counterpoint to the valley's muted hum. Stepping out of the warmth of their home tree, Ilara descended the winding, glowing stairs carved into the sentinel's trunk. The soft, mossy path beneath her bare feet felt cool and yielding. The air, usually thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and sweet dream fruit, held only a faint echo of those fragrances tonight. The motes of light that usually swirled around her like playful companions were sparser, their dance more subdued. She passed through groves of smaller, younger gleamwood saplings, their glow a mere flicker compared to their elders. Whisper sprites, tiny ephemeral beings that usually flitted about like living jewels, were fewer in number, and those she saw seemed to move with a hesitant grace. Ilara sent out a soft, wordless hum, a simple star song of comfort, and one brave sprite, no bigger than her thumb, paused to brush its delicate shimmering wings against her cheek before continuing on its way. The Star River, which usually sang a gurgling, joyous tune as it flowed, offered only a murmuring ripple tonight. Ilara knelt by its banks, dipping her fingers into the cool, luminous current. The light water felt less vibrant, its subtle energy less potent. Her glimmerstone, usually a steady beacon, pulsed with a slightly dimmer, more hesitant glow against her chest. It's true, she whispered to herself, a knot tightening in her stomach. The song is fading everywhere. She continued her journey, following the winding path that led deeper into the valley, towards the moon-petal glade. Along the way, she practiced her rudimentary star weaving. She focused on a patch of particularly dim glow moss, concentrating on the faint star songs within it, trying to coax them into brighter life. She hummed a gentle rising scale, imagining the light threads strengthening, intertwining. For a moment, the moss brightened, its emerald glow intensifying, before slowly dimming again. It was a small victory, a testament to her nascent abilities, but it also highlighted the pervasive weakness of the valley's magic. The songs were too weak to hold her weaving for long. The path eventually began to ascend gently, leading her towards a higher clearing. The air grew cooler, and the scent of the valley floor gave way to the crisp, clean aroma of high-altitude flora. Soon she saw them, the moon petal blooms. The moon petal glade was usually a breathtaking sight. Fields of giant, bowl-shaped flowers, their petals shimmering with iridescent mother-of-pearl, opened only under the starlight, collecting its essence to nourish themselves and the surrounding land. On a normal night, the glade would be ablaze with soft, pulsating light, each moon petal a miniature, living lantern. Their collective glow would be a beacon, a vibrant heart of the valley's magic. Tonight, however, the glade was muted. The moon petal blooms, though still open, drooped slightly, their petals lacking their usual luster. Their shimmering light was faint, almost ghostly, casting long, wavering shadows across the clearing. The air here, usually thick with the sweet, intoxicating scent of collected starlight, was thin and strangely odorless. Elar's glimmerstone, which should have been shining with its brightest possible glow in this place of concentrated magic, pulsed with a dull, intermittent flicker. "Oh no," she breathed, her heart sinking. This was worse than she had imagined. She closed her eyes, extending her senses, trying to feel the star songs of the glade. Her mind reached out, seeking the familiar patterns, the harmonious flow. She found them, yes, but they were weak, like a chorus of voices reduced to a mere whisper. And beneath that whisper, like a low, discordant hum, was something else. A strange, unsettling vibration that resonated with a faint, cold energy, utterly unlike the warm, living magic of the valley. It was a sharp, almost metallic tang in the otherwise smooth flow of the star songs. It felt foreign. Elara opened her eyes, scanning the glade. The discordant hum seemed to be strongest near the center, where the oldest and largest moonpetal tree stood. Its gnarled branches, usually laden with the largest, most luminous moon petals, were bare, its glow almost entirely extinguished. It looked like a skeletal guardian, drained of its vitality. Cautiously, Elara moved towards the ancient tree, her bare feet making almost no sound on the soft, mossy earth. The cold hum grew stronger, a subtle vibration that tingled on her skin, raising the fine hairs on her arms. It was a sensation she had never felt before, a lack of warmth, a feeling of emptiness, even as it vibrated with a potent, unfamiliar energy. As she drew closer, she saw a flicker of light behind the ancient moonpetal tree. It wasn't the soft, ethereal glow of starlight, nor the warm pulse of the gleamwood. This light was sharp, angular, and pulsed with an almost icy blue hue. It seemed to absorb the ambient light rather than contribute to it. Wow. Her heart thrumming, Elara crept around the massive, withered trunk of the moonpetal tree. And there, nestled at its base, partially obscured by trailing, leafless vines, was the source of the discord. It was an object unlike anything Elara had ever seen. Roughly the size of her outstretched hand, it was a multifaceted crystal, impossibly dark, yet it pulsed with that cold blue light from within. Its edges were unnaturally sharp, and it hummed with a low, almost predatory vibration. It seemed to drink in the very essence of the moonpetal glade, the faint star songs of the fading flowers drawing into its depths, only to be replaced by that chilling, discordant hum. The nearest moonpetals were not just dim, they were shriveled, their life force visibly drained. This was not a tangle of threads, nor a simple weakening. This was something active, something malevolent. It was an intrusion, a foreign body in the heart of their valley's magic. Elara stared, transfixed, a shiver running down her spine despite herself. She felt a primal instinct to snatch it away, to throw it into the deepest part of the Star River, but a stronger, wiser voice in her mind, sounding remarkably like Elder Willow, cautioned against touching the unknown. Its energy felt wrong, dangerous. She took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing herself to observe. The crystal pulsed, a rhythm that was entirely out of sync with the valley's natural heartbeat. It seemed to be drawing something from the air, from the very ground beneath it, and radiating that cold blue light. She could almost see the faint, shimmering threads of the star songs, drawn like moths to its strange, dark allure, only to vanish into its depth. This was not something she could mend with a simple star song. This was something new, something other. She knew with a certainty that resonated deep within her that she could not deal with this alone. Elder Willow needed to know. The valley needed to know. This was not a problem of fading. It was a problem of a slow, creeping invasion. Carefully, silently, Alara began to back away from the strange, humming crystal. The cold hum seemed to follow her, a faint echo in her mind. She turned and moved quickly, but without panic, retracing her steps through the dim, silent glade. The moon-petal flowers seemed even sadder now, their light almost entirely gone. As she hurried back along the path towards her home, the urgency of her discovery propelled her forward. The valley felt quieter now, the Gleamwood sentinel's glow even more subdued. The familiar comforting hum of her home tree felt miles away. The star songs, which had once been her constant companions, now felt like distant, fading memories. And beneath the ancient trees, where the perpetual twilight usually held only soft, welcoming shadows, Alara noticed a deeper, true darkness beginning to pool, gathering like ink spilled on a shimmering canvas. A darkness she had rarely, if ever, seen in the Whispering Valley. The crystal's cold hum echoed in her ears, a chilling counterpoint to the fading heart of her world. She knew, with a certainty that settled heavy in her small chest, that her journey to the moon-petal glade was only the beginning. She knew with a certainty that settled heavy in her small chest that her journey to the moon-petal glade was only the beginning. Alara clutched the crystal shard, its cool weight a small anchor against the rising tide of unease. The shadows, once merely playful dancers among the ancient boughs, now coalesced into forms that seemed to watch her, silent and unblinking. The familiar paths of the Whispering Valley, usually a tapestry of shifting light and shadow woven by the sun-dappled leaves, were becoming blurred, the vibrant greens and golds muted by an encroaching gray. She knew she couldn't linger. The valley, her home, was slowly being consumed. With a deep breath, she turned her back on the heart of the valley, a place where the grand crystal usually pulsed with a comforting glow, now barely a flicker in the growing gloom. Her small pack, filled with dried berries, a water skin, and a soft wool blanket, felt heavy on her shoulders, but her determination was heavier still. Her first steps took her along the winding root path, a route usually taken by the elder weavers when they sought rare moon mosses from the higher slopes. Today, the path felt alien. The ancient, gnarled roots, thick as sleeping dragons, were slick with an unfamiliar dampness, and the air grew colder, carrying a faint, metallic scent she couldn't place. The soft songs of the whisper winds, usually a soothing murmur through the leaves, were now hushed, replaced by an unnerving silence broken only by the crunch of her boots on the fallen leaves and the distant mournful cry of an unseen creature. The crystal in her hand throbbed faintly, a tiny pulse of defiance against the encroaching stillness. As she ventured further, the trees themselves seemed to change. Their leaves, once a vibrant spectrum of emerald and jade, now hung limp and dulled, their edges tinged with a sickly brown. The perpetual twilight of the valley deepened into something more akin to dusk, even though the sky above, glimpsed through breaks in the canopy, showed no hint of the moon or stars. It was as if the light itself was being siphoned away, leaving behind only echoes and faded memories. Alara paused at the edge of the sunken grove, a hollow where bioluminescent fungi usually painted the forest floor with a galaxy of soft ethereal glows. Tonight, they were dim, their light struggling to push back the pressing darkness, like tiny embers fighting a vast cold night. Among them, however, something caught her eye, a faint, almost invisible shimmer, like spun starlight, clinging to a cluster of the dimmest fungi. She reached out, her fingers brushing against it. It felt like cool mist, yet held a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. As she touched it, the crystal in her hand vibrated more strongly, and a whisper, not of the wind but of something deeper, seemed to brush against her mind. Follow the fading light, where life finds its last song. It was not a voice she recognized, nor truly a voice at all, but a feeling, a resonance that echoed the crystal's hum. Taking it as a sign, Alara adjusted her course, veering slightly off the elder weaver's path, drawn by the almost imperceptible shimmer that now seemed to drift ahead of her, a fleeting guide in the growing gloom. The forest grew denser, the trees twisting into more grotesque shapes, their branches like skeletal arms reaching out. This was the edge of the Gloomwood, a place spoken of in hushed tones even in the brightest days of the valley. It was where the deepest shadows liked to gather, where the sunlight rarely touched, and where ancient things slumbered. Now, with the valley's heart dimming, the Gloomwood seemed to be expanding, its tendrils of darkness creeping into previously light-filled spaces. The air here was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, but also something else, a faint, sweet, metallic tang that tickled her nose, like old blood mixed with wild berries. The shimmer ahead of her, her ephemeral guide, grew a little brighter here, as if emboldened by the very darkness it fought against. It wove through the undergrowth, a ribbon of faint starlight, beckoning her deeper. Suddenly, a rustle in the undergrowth, much larger than a mere field mouse, made Elara freeze. Her hand tightened on the crystal. Out of the shadows lumbered a creature she had only heard tales of, a mossback guardian. Usually these gentle giants, resembling enormous shaggy bears covered in living moss and ferns, were the protectors of the forest's oldest parts, their eyes glowing with a benevolent amber light. But this one was different. Its fur was matted with grime, the moss on its back brittle and grey, and its eyes, instead of amber, glowed a dull, sickly green. It let out a low growl, a sound like grinding stones, and its head swung towards her, sniffing the air. Elara stood still, heart pounding. She remembered the stories. Mossbacks never harmed those with pure hearts, but this one seemed corrupted. Its usually slow, lumbering movements were jerky, agitated. The crystal in her hand pulsed again, a cold throb that seemed to resonate with the creature's disquiet. She felt a strange urge, a whisper of understanding, that the mossback was not malicious, but in pain. Slowly, carefully, Elara extended her free hand, holding the glowing crystal forward. The sickly green eyes of the mossback narrowed, but it didn't attack. Instead, it tilted its massive head, letting out a soft whine. As the crystal's faint light brushed against its snout, a ripple passed through its matted fur. The dull green in its eyes flickered, briefly revealing a hint of the benevolent amber beneath. Then, from the depths of the forest, a new sound cut through the silence, a high-pitched, almost musical trill, followed by a flurry of movement. A small iridescent creature, no larger than her hand, darted out from behind the mossback. It had delicate, dragonfly-like wings that shimmered with all the colors of a rainbow, and a long, slender tail that pulsed with soft light. It was a Lumina sprite, a rarely seen messenger of the forest's deepest magic. The Lumina sprite zipped around the mossback, its trills growing more insistent. As it flew, tiny motes of shimmering light, like captured fireflies, drifted from its wings, settling on the mossback's diseased fur. Where they landed, the grey moss seemed to unfurl, revealing a hint of green beneath. The mossback let out a rumbling sigh, a sound of relief, and its sickly green eyes softened, though the amber was still struggling to hold its own against the darkness. The Lumina sprite then turned its attention to Elara, hovering before her face, its large, multifaceted eyes studying her intently. It chirped, a sound like tiny bells, and then flew towards the crystal in her hand, lightly touching it with one of its antennae. The crystal flared, a brief burst of pure, cool light, and the shimmer guide that had led her so far now coalesced into a more defined shape around the sprite, as if they were two parts of the same guiding magic. "Greetings, little one," a voice soft and ancient, like rustling leaves, spoke not from the sprite but from the air around it. "You carry a fragment of the heart, yes? It sings a song of fading light, a lament for the world." Elara gasped, startled. Who are you?" The Lumina sprite dipped and spun. "I am Lyra, a weaver of whispers, a keeper of the Gloomwood's fading light." This poor guardian, Lyra indicated the mossback with a sweep of her wings. "It is afflicted by the encroaching shadows. The grand crystal's dimming light weakens the forest's will, leaving it vulnerable." "I know," Elara said, her voice small but firm. "I'm going to the Moonpetal Glade, to find a way to make it glow again." Lyra's light pulsed with what seemed like approval. "A brave journey, Elara. The Moonpetal Glade holds ancient secrets, yes, but the path there is fraught. The darkness grows bolder with each passing hour. The very air around us thickens with its presence." The mossback guardian let out another low groan, and Lyra flew to its side, nudging one of the tiny motes of light deeper into its fur. "We will guide you for a time," Lyra continued, her voice echoing in Elara's mind. "But the Gloomwood is not a place for the faint of heart. The shadows here are not merely an absence of light. They are a presence, seeking to drain warmth and memory. With a renewed sense of purpose and the unexpected companionship of Lyra and the slowly recovering mossback, Elara pressed on. Lyra zipped ahead, her iridescent light a beacon, and the mossback, though still moving stiffly, lumbered behind, its massive form providing a comforting sense of protection. The gloomwood was indeed a treacherous place. Twisted branches clawed at the sky, forming a dense canopy that swallowed what little light remained. Strange, whispering winds snaked through the trees, carrying unsettling echoes and the faint, melancholic strains of unseen instruments. Lyra warned her about the mist weavers, ethereal wisps of shadow that tried to lure travelers off course with illusions of warmth and safety. Elara learned to trust the cold hum of her crystal, which grew noticeably colder whenever a mist weaver drew near, and Lyra's sharp trills, which cut through the illusions like a silver knife. One evening, as the perpetual dusk deepened into a true, oppressive night within the gloomwood, they huddled beneath the roots of an enormous ancient oak, a tree so vast its trunk seemed to disappear into the gloom above. Lyra, her light dimmed to a gentle pulse, settled on Elara's shoulder. The mossback, having found a small clearing, curled into a massive protective ball, its breath a soft rumbling vibration. The moon-petal glade, Elara whispered, looking up at the invisible sky. What will I find there? Lyra's voice was softer now, almost a sigh. Legend says it is where the first moon-petal bloomed, born from a tear of the moonweaver herself. It is a place of immense power, a nexus where the threads of moonlight and dream stuff meet. But it is also guarded, not by walls or gates, but by trials of spirit. Trials? The glade reveals itself only to those who are truly ready, Lyra explained. It tests your resolve, your understanding of balance, and your ability to see beyond the veil of what is. The moon petal, it is said, does not simply gish its magic. It asks you to understand it. They continued their journey for what felt like many days and nights, though in the gloomwood, the passage of time became a blurred concept. The darkness began to subtly change. It wasn't just an absence of light anymore. It had a texture, a presence. Sometimes it felt like sticky cobwebs brushing against her face. Other times it was a heavy cloak that pressed down on her, stealing her breath. The crystal in her hand was her constant companion, its cold hum a rhythmic heartbeat against the growing chill. Lyra, tirelessly flitting ahead, taught Elara to see the subtle currents of magic in the air, the faint trails left by ancient forest spirits, and the telltale shimmer of a hidden path. One morning, or what passed for morning in the gloomwood, they reached a place where the trees abruptly thinned, giving way to a jagged rocky landscape. Before them yawned a massive crevice, a dark scar across the earth. From its depths rose a faint shimmering mist, glowing with an ethereal, almost sickly blue light. The shimmering caves, Lyra trilled, her voice now tinged with a solemn note. The path through the heart of the earth. Here, the darkness is different. It is ancient, slumbering, but awakening now with the grand crystal's fading light. Be wary, Elara. Illusions are strong here, and the ground itself can deceive. The mossback guardian hesitated at the edge of the crevice, letting out a mournful rumble. Its eyes, though still fighting the sickly green, were wide with trepidation. My task ends here, little weaver, Lyra's voice resonated, filled with a touch of sadness. The mossbacks are bound to the living wood. We cannot enter the stone heart of the world without losing ourselves entirely to the deep earth's pull. Farewell, brave traveler. May your light not falter. Elara stroked the mossback's mossy fur, feeling the faint tremor beneath. Thank you, guardian. Thank you, Lyra. Lyra, the lumina sprite, hovered before her face, her iridescent wings beating a slow, wistful rhythm. Remember what the crystal teaches you, Elara. It is not merely a key, but a reflection. Look within as well as without. With a final soft trill, Lyra zipped back towards the mossback, and together, the two ancient creatures melted back into the shadows of the gloomwood, leaving Elara utterly alone at the precipice of the shimmering caves. A profound sense of solitude washed over Elara, heavier than any shadow she had yet encountered. But then the crystal in her hand pulsed, a strong, steady thrum, and she remembered Lyra's words. It is not merely a key, but a reflection. She looked at the polished surface of the crystal, and for a fleeting moment she saw not her own reflection, but a swirl of faint, milky light within its depths, like a miniature galaxy. It gave her courage. Taking a deep breath, Ilara began her descent into the shimmering caves. The blue mist thickened around her, clinging to her clothes, tasting of cold stone and forgotten magic. The air grew heavy, damp, and the silence here was absolute, broken only by the drip of unseen water and the occasional distant echo that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The ground was uneven, treacherous. Stalagmites and stalactites, some thin as needles, others massive as ancient pillars, bristled from the floor and ceiling. The blue mist, her only source of light, cast long, distorted shadows that danced and writhed, making it difficult to discern true paths from mere phantoms. Her crystal hummed louder now, a constant low thrum that vibrated through her bones. It felt like a tiny beating heart in her palm. As she delved deeper, she noticed faint veins of the same blue light embedded within the cave walls, pulsing softly, like dormant arteries of the earth. These, she realized, were the true pathways, the veins of moon ore that led to the glade. The caves twisted and turned, narrowing into tight passages that forced her to squeeze through, then opening into vast echoing caverns. In one such cavern she saw them, the whisper wraiths. They were not solid, but ethereal, like columns of shimmering, blue-gray smoke, drifting silently through the air. They had no discernible features, but Ilara felt their presence keenly, a chilling sensation that seemed to drain the warmth from her very soul. They emitted no sound, but a profound ancient sorrow seemed to emanate from them, a grief so deep it threatened to overwhelm her. Lyra's warning echoed. "Illusions are strong here." Ilara clutched her crystal, its coldness a stark contrast to the despair the wraiths projected. She felt a phantom chill, a sudden memory of a loneliness so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She wanted to curl up, to succumb to the overwhelming sadness. But the crystal pulsed, a sharp, insistent throb, cutting through the illusion. She focused on its hum, on the small, swirling light within. She remembered the warmth of the grand crystal, the soft, dappled light of her valley, the brave trills of Lyra. These were not her memories, they were the wraith's echoes of sorrow. With a surge of defiance, Ilara pushed past the illusion, forcing herself to walk through the spectral forms. They parted around her like smoke, their chilling aura momentarily intensifying before fading behind her. It was a harrowing experience, but she emerged stronger, more resolute. She continued, following the pulsing blue veins of moon ore. The air grew slightly warmer, and the blue mist thinned, replaced by a softer silver glow that seemed to emanate from the very stone. The caves began to ascend, the path becoming less treacherous, more like a winding staircase carved by an unseen hand. After what felt like an age, she reached a narrow opening, barely wide enough for her to pass. As she squeezed through, the air changed abruptly. It was no longer damp and heavy, but fresh, cool, and carried a faint, sweet scent she couldn't quite place. She stepped out onto a ledge and gasped. Before her lay a sight that stole her breath. Not the glade itself, not yet, but a vast underground lake, its surface a mirror of shimmering liquid silver. From its depths rose enormous, translucent lily pads, each one as wide as a small cottage, glowing with a soft internal luminescence. And floating gently between these lily pads were ethereal, boat-like crafts, woven from what looked like spun moonlight, each one with a single delicate flower at its prow, a moon petal, its petals unfurling in slow, silent motion, radiating a pure, white light. The air here was filled with a soft, melodious hum, like a choir of unseen voices singing in perfect harmony. It resonated with her crystal, causing it to glow with a gentle, inner warmth, its coldness replaced by a comforting energy. The faint, sweet scent was stronger here, the fragrance of the moon petals themselves. At the edge of the lake, standing beside one of the moonboats, was a figure. Tall and slender, cloaked in robes the color of deep twilight, their face was obscured by a hood woven with shimmering threads of silver. They held a staff, not of wood, but of polished obsidian, topped with a smaller, perfectly formed moon petal that pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm. The figure exuded an aura of ancient wisdom and serene power. As Ilara stepped fully onto the ledge, the figure slowly turned their head, and the hidden face beneath the hood seemed to tilt towards her. A voice, clear as a bell yet as deep as the earth, spoke. "Welcome, child of the Whispering Valley. You have journeyed far, and faced the encroaching shadow with courage. Your crystal sings a song of hope, a melody we have not heard in many an age. Elara felt a strange sense of recognition, as if she had always known this place, this moment. "Are you a guardian of the moon-petal glade?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The figure nodded slowly. "I am Lyra's kin, a keeper of the glade. My name is Lumina." The silver threads on the hood seemed to shimmer more brightly, and Elara caught a fleeting glimpse of eyes that held the depth of a starry night sky. "You seek to rekindle the grand crystal, to push back the encroaching darkness. A noble quest. But the moon-petal glade offers not just power, but understanding. The grand crystal does not merely was its light, Elara. It forgets its purpose. And the darkness, it is not merely an external force. It is a forgetfulness. It is a forgetfulness, a deep slumber of the world's spirit." Lumina gestured towards one of the moonboats. "Come, brave one. Your journey to the moon-petal glade is only now truly beginning. For to reach the heart of the glade, you must first navigate the lake of reflections and confront the echoes of what was and what might be." Elara looked at the shimmering lake, then back at Lumina, her heart filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The crystal in her hand pulsed with a gentle warmth, a promise of the magic that lay ahead. She knew, with an even deeper certainty, that the answers she sought were close, but the path to them would require more than just bravery. It would require a journey into the very essence of light and shadow, memory and forgetting. The moonboat awaited, its petal glowing invitingly, ready to carry her deeper into the mysteries of the silver lake. With a deep, steadying breath, Elara stepped onto the moonboat. It was softer than she expected, its petal-like surface yielding gently beneath her worn boots as if made of woven moonlight and velvet. The boat, no larger than a small rowboat, settled slightly in the water, sending barely a ripple across the glassy surface of the silver lake. A soft, humming warmth emanated from its luminous petals, echoing the pulse of the crystal in her hand. As she sat, the boat seemed to cradle her, a silent, living thing ready for its task. She looked back at the shore, the ancient trees now a darker silhouette against the sky, their leaves whispering secrets to the cool night air. The path she had followed, winding through the whispering woods, was already fading from view, swallowed by the encroaching shadows of the forest. Turning forward, Elara faced the vast expanse of the lake, a canvas reflecting the infinite tapestry of the cosmos. Stars, like scattered diamonds, glittered not only above but also below, creating an illusion of floating through the very heart of the universe. The moonboat did not require oars or sails. With a gentle sigh, it began to glide, seemingly of its own accord, toward the shimmering horizon. It left no wake, moving with an almost imperceptible grace, as if it were a dream drifting across a sleeping mind. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth, night-blooming jasmine, and something else, something ancient and ethereal, like distant starlight. As they moved deeper, the reflections on the lake grew clearer, more vibrant. Elara saw constellations she'd only ever heard whispered about in old tales. The Serpent of Sighs, its long body winding through the celestial river, the Weaver's Loom, a delicate cluster of stars spinning threads of light and shadow, and brightest of all, the Great Bear, its eyes fixed upon the distant moon, which now hung like a colossal pearl, casting a silver path directly before them. The crystal in her palm pulsed more strongly now, its warmth spreading through her fingers, up her arm, and settling gently in her chest. It seemed to resonate with the lake itself, or perhaps with the boat. Small, phosphorescent motes of light began to appear beneath the surface of the water, swirling in intricate patterns, like schools of tiny living stars. They danced and twirled, sometimes leaping from the water in brief, sparkling arcs before plunging back into the luminous depths. Elara leaned over the side, her breath catching in her throat, watching these ephemeral creatures. They seemed to be made of pure light, their forms shifting and reforming with every movement. Further out, ancient, gnarled trees, with branches heavy with glowing moss, dipped their boughs into the water, their roots disappearing into the unseen depths. Their reflections were perfect, mirroring the gnarled majesty above. From their branches hung delicate bell-shaped flowers that chimed with the softest breeze, producing a melody like wind chimes made of crystal and starlight. This was not merely a lake, it was a living, breathing symphony of light and sound, a place where the veil between worlds felt impossibly thin. Elara felt a sense of peace settle over her, a quiet understanding that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The questions that had weighed so heavily on her heart did not disappear, but they felt less urgent, less daunting, replaced by a profound sense of wonder. She was a tiny speck in a vast, magical world, yet she felt connected, an integral part of its unfolding mystery. The moonboat continued its silent journey, the silver path stretching endlessly before them. After what felt like hours, though time seemed to lose its meaning on the silver lake, the air began to thicken, not with mist, but with a shimmering, almost palpable light. It coalesced ahead, forming a swirling vortex of silver and pearl, like a gateway woven from pure starlight. The moonboat, without any prompting, steered directly towards it. As they drew closer, Elara could discern faint, ethereal shapes within the shimmering light, wisps of memory perhaps, or echoes of forgotten dreams. The air around her hummed with a soft resonant frequency, and the crystal in her hand glowed with an intensity that illuminated her face. It felt less like passing through a physical barrier, and more like stepping into a thought, or a feeling. The boat slipped through the shimmering veil, and Elara gasped. They were no longer on the open lake. Instead, they had entered a vast cavernous space, entirely enclosed yet open to the sky, as if the lake had been swallowed by a mountain whose roof had then dissolved into the heavens. Above, the stars were even more brilliant, closer, and constellations she had never seen before sparkled in vivid hues of amethyst and emerald. The water here was utterly still, reflecting the celestial roof with such perfect clarity that it was impossible to tell where the water ended and the sky began. Massive crystalline pillars, shimmering with internal light, rose from the depths, reaching toward the stars. They pulsed with a gentle rhythm, like the beating heart of the world. Vines of luminous flora clung to these pillars, bearing flowers that unfurled in slow motion, releasing clouds of iridescent dust that drifted lazily through the air before dissolving into nothingness. The moonboat drifted towards the largest of these pillars, a magnificent spire that glowed with a soft, milky light, different from the others. As they approached, Elara noticed movement within its depths. Not beyond the pillar, but within it. Faces, fleeting and indistinct, seemed to swim within the milky light, their expressions shifting between joy, sorrow, curiosity, and peace. They were like echoes, imprints of emotions perhaps, or memories. The boat nudged gently against the base of the pillar, coming to a halt. The air here was cool and still, filled with the faint scent of ozone, and something akin to old parchment. Elara, her heart beating a steady rhythm of awe and anticipation, slowly rose to her feet. The crystal in her hand now pulsed with a steady rhythmic thrum, guiding her gaze to a small iridescent archway at the base of the pillar, barely visible amidst the luminous vines. Cautiously, she stepped off the boat and onto a small, smooth platform of what felt like polished moonstone. The archway shimmered, beckoning her closer. It was not dark or foreboding, but rather inviting, hinting at ancient secrets and forgotten wisdom. As she drew nearer, she realized the archway was not empty. A figure stood within it, cloaked in robes of shimmering silver, their form fluid and indistinct, as if woven from moonlight itself. "Welcome, seeker of echoes," a voice resonated, gentle yet profound, like the rustling of ancient leaves and the murmur of deep waters. It was neither male nor female, but something beyond, a voice that carried the wisdom of ages. "You have navigated the Silver Lake and found the veiled heart. The crystal of whispers has led you well." Elara clutched the crystal tighter. Who are you?" she managed, her voice a soft whisper in the vast chamber. The figure stepped forward, and as they did, their forms solidified slightly. They were tall and slender, with eyes that seemed to hold the reflected starlight of 1,000 nights. Their face was serene, ageless, framed by long flowing hair that shimmered like spun silver. "I am the keeper of the veiled heart," the entity replied, their voice carrying a faint echo. "Some call me Lyriel, the weaver of forgotten dreams. Others know me as the whisperer in the light. Here, I safeguard the threads of memory and the shadows of forgetting." Lyriel gestured with a graceful hand, and the milky light within the pillar seemed to churn, revealing more distinct images. Faces, places, moments in time. A child's laughter echoing through a sunlit field, an old woman's hand gently stroking a cat, the triumphant raising of a banner in battle, a quiet moment of shared grief. These were not just images. Elara felt the emotions attached to them, a kaleidoscope of human experience washing over her. This is the repository of all that has been remembered, and all that has been willingly or unwillingly forgotten, Lyriel explained. Every thought, every emotion, every event that shapes a life leaves an echo here. The silver lake is the conduit, and the veiled heart is its core. Elara felt a lump form in her throat. I seek answers about my past, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. About why my memories feel so incomplete. Like there's a part of me that's missing. Lyriel nodded slowly, their starlit eyes seeming to peer into the very depths of Elara's soul. Memory is a fragile thing, child. It is woven from threads of light and shadow, joy and sorrow, presence and absence. Sometimes, to protect a spirit, or to allow it to move forward, threads are gently rewoven, or even, for a time, set aside. Set aside? Elara questioned, a flicker of hope igniting within her. You mean they aren't truly gone? They can be found again? Nothing is ever truly gone in the tapestry of existence, Lyriel said, their voice soft as a lullaby. But to retrieve a thread from the realm of forgetting requires understanding its purpose. Why was it set aside? What balance did it serve? Forgetting is not always a curse. Sometimes it is a necessary kindness, a space for new growth. Elara looked down at the crystal in her hand. This crystal, it feels connected to it all. To memory, to this place. Indeed, Lyriel confirmed, a faint knowing smile gracing their lips. The crystal of whispers is a fragment of the first star, the very star that first illuminated the path of conscious thought. It resonates with the core essence of memory itself. It does not merely finding memories. It attunes you to them, allowing you to walk within their echoes, to feel their truth, both light and shadow. The keeper then turned and gestured toward a pathway that branched off from the main chamber. It led into a more shadowed area, where the crystalline pillars glowed with deeper, more subdued hues of indigo and violet. To find your answers, Elara, you must journey deeper into the heart. The path of memory is not always straightforward. Sometimes the most important truths are found not in the brightest light, but in the softest shadows. The path of echoes leads to the pool of unveiling, Lyriel continued, their voice resonating with ancient knowledge. There, memories that have been sequestered, dreams that have been hushed, and truths that have been veiled, may reveal themselves. But remember, Elara, to confront a memory is to relive it, to feel its joy, its pain, its peace. Are you ready to embrace both the light and the shadow of your past? Elara took another deep breath, her gaze fixed on the shadowed path. The prospect was daunting, yet the yearning within her, the desire to understand who she truly was stronger than any fear. I am ready, she declared, her voice firm, the crystal pulsing steadily in her hand, a beacon of reassurance. Then go, Seeker, Lyriel said, their voice filled with quiet encouragement. Let the crystal of whispers be your guide. Trust its pulse, and listen to the echoes of your own heart. For the answers you seek are not merely right there, they are also within in you. With a nod, Elara turned and began to walk along the path of echoes. The air grew cooler here, and the luminous flora took on a more subdued glow, casting long, dancing shadows. The ground beneath her feet was no longer polished moonstone but soft, mossy earth that felt ancient and alive. The scent of ozone gave way to a delicate aroma of night-blooming orchids and damp earth. As she walked, the echoes within the crystalline pillars became more personal, more vivid. She saw glimpses of scenes that felt vaguely familiar, yet fragmented. A pair of hands, small and nimble, weaving intricate patterns with silvery thread. A soft lullaby sung in a language she almost understood. The feeling of wind rushing past her as she soared through the air, a fleeting sensation of boundless freedom. Each glimpse sent a ripple of emotion through her, a tantalizing hint of a past just out of reach. The crystal in her hand began to hum more insistently, vibrating with a gentle energy that guided her steps. It felt like an extension of her own will, an ancient compass pointing towards a truth she was destined to rediscover. The path meandered deeper, the light becoming softer, filtered through layers of luminous crystal and dense, glowing foliage. Finally, the path opened into a hidden grotto, bathed in a soft ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. In the center of the grotto lay a pool, not of water but of shimmering, liquid light. It pulsed with a gentle rhythmic glow, like a living heart. This was the pool of unveiling. Around the edges of the pool, ancient, twisted trees with branches like outstretched arms dipped their leaves into the luminous liquid. Their bark was like polished obsidian, absorbing the light and reflecting it in faint iridescent streaks. The air here was heavy with a profound silence, broken only by the soft, almost imperceptible hum of the pool. Elara approached the pool of unveiling, her gaze fixed on its shimmering surface. The liquid light swirled with inner currents, forming ephemeral shapes and patterns that danced and dissolved. The crystal in her hand now glowed with an almost blinding intensity, its warmth spreading throughout her entire being. She felt a profound connection to this place, as if it had been waiting for her, for this very moment. As she stood at the edge, a tendril of the liquid light reached out from the pool, curving gently towards her. It was warm, inviting. Hesitantly, Elara extended her hand, allowing the luminous tendril to coil around the crystal. As it made contact, a surge of energy coursed through her, not overwhelming but deeply resonant. The pool of unveiling began to ripple more intensely, and the light within it flared, illuminating the entire grotto. Images began to form on its surface, not fragmented glimpses like before, but clearer, more coherent scenes. She saw herself, a younger version, with brighter eyes and a mischievous smile, playing in a sun-dappled meadow. She saw a kind face, a woman with eyes like hers, braiding flowers into her hair, singing the very lullaby Elara had almost remembered. A deep, resonant male voice joining in, his laughter echoing through the meadow. A family, a home, filled with warmth and love. Then the images shifted, the light in the pool flickering. The meadow grew dark, the laughter faded, replaced by a sense of unease, then fear. Shadows gathered at the edges of the scene. A sudden jarring rupture, a feeling of being torn away, a blinding flash of light and then nothing. A void. Elara gasped, clutching her chest. The crystal pulsed wildly, reflecting the turbulence in the pool. It wasn't just seeing the memories, she was feeling them. The joy, the love, the sudden, overwhelming loss. It was like living through it all again, but with the perspective of her current self, observing the past with new eyes. The pool then calmed, the light softening. A final image formed, shimmering on the surface, a young woman, familiar yet different, standing before a towering ancient tree, holding a crystal identical to the one in Elara's hand. The woman's face was etched with sorrow, but also with fierce determination. She gently placed the crystal at the base of the tree, whispered a word Elara couldn't quite hear, and then, with a deep sigh, turned and walked away, her form fading into the distant forest. It was a memory of forgetting, a memory of a choice. The woman was herself, or a part of herself, deliberately setting aside a portion of her own past. The tree. It was the very tree where she had found the crystal, the one at the edge of the whispering woods. The tendril of light slowly retracted from Elara's crystal, and the pool of unveiling settled back into its rhythmic glow. The intensity in the grotto softened, leaving Elara trembling, her heart a tumultuous sea of emotions. She now understood. Her memories weren't stolen or lost by some external force. They had been carefully, painfully, set aside by her own past self. But why? Why would she choose to forget such joy, and such pain? What was the balance Lyriel had spoken of? The crystal in her hand, no longer pulsing wildly, now radiated a steady, comforting warmth. It was a bridge, a key, to unlock not just memories, but understanding. Elara knew this was just the beginning. She had found a piece of the puzzle, a crucial link, but the full picture remained elusive. The why still echoed in the quiet grotto, urging her onward. The journey into light and shadow, memory and forgetting, had just revealed its true complexity. The path ahead, she realized, would be one of deeper introspection, of piecing together the fragments of a life chosen to be veiled, for reasons she now desperately needed to uncover. The path ahead, she realized, would be one of deeper introspection, of piecing together the fragments of a life chosen to be veiled, for reasons she now desperately needed to uncover. The grotto, having offered its precious, painful truth, now felt too small. The shimmering waters, once a mirror of confusion, now reflected a quiet resolve in Elara's eyes. She knew, with a certainty that hummed in her bones, that the answers lay deeper within the land itself, in places where time moved slower, where ancient whispers still carried the echoes of forgotten decisions. The Whispering Woods, a name that had always evoked a shiver of mystery, now called to her like a forgotten melody. She emerged from the cool embrace of the grotto, the moon a silver sliver above the tree line, painting the dewy path in shades of indigo and violet. The air grew cooler, thicker with the scent of damp earth and ancient pines, as she ventured towards the looming shadows of the forest. This wasn't the manicured path of the village, nor the familiar trails of the foothills. This was the edge of the true wild, where trees stood taller than any spire, their branches interwoven like gnarled fingers reaching for distant stars. As Ilara stepped beneath the canopy, the world shifted. The sounds of the night, crickets and rustling leaves, seemed to soften, replaced by a low, pervasive hum, the collective breath of the forest. The trees themselves seemed to watch her, their ancient barks resembling wrinkled faces, their roots like sleeping serpents weaving through the mossy ground. This was the domain of the Old Ones, the guardians of the land's oldest secrets, beings whispered about in fireside tales but rarely seen. She walked for what felt like hours, guided by an instinctual pull, the sunstone amulet pulsing gently against her chest, a warm ember against her skin. It was not a physical warmth, but a deep, resonant vibration, a kinship with the magic that saturated this ancient place. Deeper and deeper she went, until the trees grew so dense that only slivers of moonlight dappled the forest floor, illuminating patches of glowing moss and luminescent fungi. Then, she saw them. Not moving, yet intensely alive. They were colossal, ancient oaks, their trunks wider than her small cottage, their limbs twisted into fantastic shapes that seemed to hold stories in every knot and burl. But these were no ordinary trees. From the deepest shadows within their boughs, eyes, like pools of liquid starlight, opened and regarded her. They were slow, deliberate blinks, as if awakening from centuries of slumber. A voice, not heard with her ears but felt in the very marrow of her bones, rumbled through the forest. It was a chorus of whispers, a symphony of creaking boughs and rustling leaves, older than mountains, deeper than oceans. "Little star-seeker," it murmured, "you carry the light of a forgotten dawn." Ilara, though awed, felt no fear, only a profound sense of belonging. "Old Ones," she whispered, her voice barely a breath against the immensity of theirs. "I seek understanding. I have found a fragmented memory, a veiled life. I need to know why." The stellar eyes blinked again, a slow, knowing appraisal. The song of forgetting, the chorus of voices sighed. A melody woven long ago, to protect what could not be contained, only slumbered. One of the great trees, its bark resembling ancient parchment etched with runes, shifted slightly, a low groan echoing through its mighty trunk. "She was Lyra," the voice clarified. Softer now, individual, yet still resonating with collective wisdom. Lyra, the weaver of dreams, the first guardian of the sunstone. Her heart beat with the rhythm of this land, her spirit intertwined with its very roots. What did she forget? Ilara asked, her heart aching with a sudden profound sorrow for this unknown Lyra. "She chose not to forget, little one, but to acheveye," another tree spoke, its voice like the gentle rush of a hidden spring. "Long, long ago, a shadow arose from the deepest places of the earth. Not evil, not malicious, but a raw, untamed force of forgetting, of unmaking. It threatened to unravel the very threads of creation, to turn vibrant life into silent dust. Lyra, with the sunstone bound to her essence, faced this shadow," the chorus continued. "She did not defeat it, for such a force cannot be slain. Instead, she chose to sing to it, a lullaby of containment, a song of forgetting. She wove her own memories, her own identity, into the fabric of this song, binding the shadow into a deep, unending slumber, hidden beneath the roots of this very forest." Ilara gasped, the truth a cold, sharp shock, yet also a profound revelation. "She sacrificed herself, her own memories, to protect us?" "Indeed," confirmed the first tree. "But not a full sacrifice, not an erasure. Her memories were not lost, but scattered, like seeds in the wind, each a fragment of the song. They were veiled, so that none might accidentally awaken the slumbering shadow, or misuse the magic that contained it. But also, so that one day, when the world's own song of remembering grew dim, a new voice, a new heart, could reweave. And that's why I found the grotto, the sunstone, the fragment. Elara looked down at the amulet, its soft glow seeming to intensify. You carry the echo of Lyra's own heart, the old ones affirmed. Her blood runs through your veins, her spirit calls to yours. You are the weaver's descendant, the one destined to hear the full song and reinforce its magic, to ensure the shadow sleeps soundly for another age. A new feeling bloomed in Elara's chest, not just understanding but a profound sense of purpose, a legacy she was only just beginning to grasp. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice steady, determined. The old ones guided her deeper still, to a hidden clearing bathed in the ethereal glow of countless fireflies. At its center stood a single ancient stone altar, overgrown with moss and delicate luminescent flowers. Above it, from the highest bough of the surrounding trees, hung a cascade of crystalline chimes, tinkling softly in the unseen breeze, their melody a faint, haunting tune. "This is the heart of the song," the old ones explained. "Here, Lyra wove the final threads of her great work. To truly understand, to truly reinforce, you must open your heart, little star seeker. Place the sunstone upon the altar and let the echoes of Lyra's memories flow through you. Do not fear the forgetting, nor the remembering. Embrace the balance." With trembling hands, Elara unclasped the sunstone amulet and placed it carefully on the mossy altar. As it settled, a soft golden light pulsed from its core, radiating outwards, illuminating the clearing in a warm, welcoming glow. The crystalline chimes above began to ring louder, their combined melodies weaving into a complex hypnotic harmony that filled the air. Elara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and focused on the sunstone, on the connection she felt to Lyra, to the land, to the ancient magic. The golden light seemed to seep into her very being, flowing through her veins, warming her spirit. She felt a pulling sensation, as if her own memories were intertwining with something vast and ancient. Suddenly, she was no longer just Elara. She was Whis. She experienced the raw power of the shadow, a silent encroaching dread that sought to erase all joy, all light, all memory. She felt Lyra's unwavering determination, her deep love for the vibrant world around her, her profound sorrow at the thought of its unmaking. Elara felt the immense effort as Lyra channeled the sunstone's radiant energy, not to destroy, but to decontain, to pacify. She saw Lyra weaving the song of forgetting, a beautiful, sorrowful lullaby of light and shadow, binding the shadow into a slumber, sealing it beneath the very roots of the world. And then, she felt the final poignant choice. Lyra's decision to scatter her own memories, not as a punishment, but as a safeguard. To ensure that the song of forgetting would never truly fade, that its intricate magic would remain intact, protected even from herself, until the time was right for a descendant to reawaken its purpose. It was a selfless act, a profound commitment to the future, a choice made not in fear, but in hope. Elara felt the burden of Lyra's sacrifice, but also the immense peace that came with it. It was a peace born of knowing that the world was safe, that the shadow would sleep, and that her legacy would endure, not as a forgotten legend, but as a living, breathing song, passed down through generations. When the visions faded, and Elara slowly opened her eyes, the golden light of the sunstone still pulsed, but now it felt different, brighter, imbued with a renewed purpose. The crystalline chimes continued their gentle melody, now sounding like a lullaby of profound understanding. Elara felt lighter, yet profoundly anchored. Her own memories were clear, sharper than ever, but now they were interwoven with a thread of ancient wisdom, a deep, resonant understanding of the land's heartbeat. The old ones stirred in the shadows. "The song is renewed, little star seeker," they rumbled, their voices filled with satisfaction. "The veil is understood. You carry Lyra's legacy, not as a burden, but as a guiding light. The land remembers. And now, so do you." Elara rose, her fingers gently touching the sunstone, which now felt not just ancient, but deeply personal. She understood now that the journey wasn't about fully unveiling Lyra, but about understanding the wisdom of her choice, and accepting her own place in the grand tapestry of guardianship. The shadow still slept, and her task was to ensure its slumber remained undisturbed, to be a quiet guardian of the song of forgetting, ready to listen for its melody should it ever begin to waver. As the first hints of dawn painted the eastern sky in soft rose and gold, Elara emerged from the whispering woods. The forest, though still ancient, felt less mysterious, more like a wise, old friend. The sun, as it crested the horizon, caught the sunstone amulet, making it gleam with a pure, steady light. Elara knew her journey was far from over. Life was a continuous unfolding of mysteries, of light and shadow, of remembering and forgetting. But now, she walked with a quiet strength, a deeper connection to the world around her, and a profound understanding of the sacrifices made to keep it safe. The why no longer echoed emptily, but resonated with purpose. She was Elara, the weaver's descendant, and the guardian of a most beautiful, most ancient lullaby. And as the day brightened, she knew she carried the light, not just for herself, but for all the dreaming world. Her heart, now full, hummed with a quiet, certain song of its own.